Okay, so let's look again at verses 2 through 4. James says, when troubles come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. And he says, for you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. We've already looked at this. He says in verse 4, so let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. When your endurance is fully developed, which is developed because trials and trouble comes into our lives, he says, when your endurance is fully developed, you will be complete. See, look back at verse 3, the word tested. He says, when your faith is tested, it's the same word that is used in Proverbs 27. In verse 21, it says, fire tests the purity of silver and gold. See, the way that gold is made is it has to be refined in the fire. It has to be tested and tried in the fire. And this is what James is saying. He's saying the reason we should have joy even in the midst of trouble is because we know that trouble is the proving ground for our faith. And when our faith is tested like this, when our faith goes through the fire like this, then we'll be complete. Then we'll grow. Then we'll be mature. Peter says the exact same thing in 1 Peter 1. He says, we have a priceless inheritance, an inheritance that is kept in heaven for you, pure and undefiled, beyond the reach of change and decay. See, he's using this imagery of purity, like gold in a fire. He says, and through your faith, God is protecting you by his power until you receive the salvation, which is ready to be revealed on the last day for all to see. And so he says in verse 6, so be truly glad. There is wonderful joy ahead. Look, he uses the same word that James uses. He says there's wonderful joy ahead, even though you have to endure many trials for a little while. These trials will show that your faith is genuine. You see this concept here? It's the exact same thing James is saying. He says this, it is being tested. Your faith is being tested as fire tests and purifies gold, though your faith is far more precious than mere gold. See, Peter is saying the exact same thing James is saying. He says, this is good. Troubles are good. We shouldn't look at troubles in our life and say, this is horrible. I can't believe this is happening. We should receive them and say, this right here is an opportunity for me to be tested, for me to put more faith in Jesus. And this is what both James and Peter are saying. In fact, Peter goes on and says, so when your faith remains strong through many trials, it will bring you much praise and glory and honor on the day when Jesus Christ is revealed to the whole world. But here's the thing. In the meantime, our faith doesn't always remain strong. We're not complete. We lack endurance and patience. We don't welcome troubles. They're not fun for us. If you're like me, my faith has been tested and I've failed. And that's why James says this in verse 5. If you need wisdom, ask our generous God and he will give it to you. He won't rebuke you for asking. Have you noticed that there's a change in your prayer life when troubles come? And this is what James is saying. He's saying, listen, in the midst of trouble, in the midst of trial, you're not perfect yet. You're not there yet. You don't totally trust God yet. He says this. So that's why if you need wisdom, go to God. He's talking about prayer. He's saying he's not going to rebuke you for asking. He's not going to say you're a horrible person, you're a horrible Christian because you don't get it yet, you don't fully trust me yet. But he says in verse 6, but when you ask him, be sure that your faith is in God alone, and don't waver, for a person with divided loyalty is as unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Now let me close with this. Receive what? What is James talking about praying for? What is he talking about receiving from the Lord? Is it the stuff we're asking for? Is it deliverance from our troubles? Well, maybe. But go back and read these verses. I think James is talking about receiving endurance and patience and maturity and completion. I think James is talking about being able to trust in God, that he is in control, that his way is best, because that's what real faith is about. 24-hour-a-day faith, 7-day-a-week faith, not just Sunday morning faith, but faith for the other 6 days. Now, why don't you hit pause and talk about it? And then make sure to check out some of the extra videos in this playlist for today.